Score Rosenberg podcast coming to you live and direct from the lab, Paterson, New Jersey, on a beautiful night. We're in the space. We have a great energy around us. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to give you something epic tonight. We have a guest in house that flew in exclusively to be here tonight from Jamaica. So we're going to touch on that. But you know what I normally do. I always take a moment to big up the crew that's in the house, everybody on the team that helps this whole production move forward. Let me put a big round of applause to Manny behind the camera. Thank you so much for being here. Big shout out to E holding us down on the sound. And a big shout out to our friend Jennifer DeCunto is in the house getting ready for that trip to South Africa. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored and blessed to have my mother, Beverly Lawrence, in the house tonight. Round of applause for that. We are now blessed and we are now official. Thank you so much, madam, for being here.
You're welcome.
So I was asking you earlier, you've seen some of the stuff we've done, and we were coming up in the elevator. By the way, when we walked up the steps and you were asking me, am I supposed to go up the fire escape? You looked back and said, you have to lift me up to get me up there, right?
Of course.
I wouldn't do that to you.
Okay.
But let me ask you this. What was your opinion going in the elevator and coming up into the space?
I thought I was in a 1930s movie.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that, well, I can put that to my records that I was back then.
In the movies, right?
In the movies.
So fortunately enough, I was your son because I'm sure you wouldn't trust anybody else walking you through.
Oh, no.
I could see it on your face too.
No.
So we come in the elevator, we come upstairs, and I'm being this granular because I'm trying to get ready to get your experience. The elevator door open. What's your thoughts when you walk into our space?
It's the exact opposite of the elevator. I never expected this.
Right.
You know, it's like night and day.
Yeah, okay. So welcome for taking the trek up here.
Thank you.
And normally, the guests that we love, we let them make the trek up the steps, 5 flights.
Oh, really?
But you're VIP, so we definitely had to bring the elevator in to bring you up. So once again, thank you so much for being here. And as I said, she's fresh from Jamaica. A couple things that we're going to touch on is the exposure that not only you have gained from as an individual to make the impact you've been making on the world, but I want to find out how you navigated the waters you have, so my listeners and my viewers can realize that they can tap into some of the strength that you have, transmitted through the years. So let's just jump into a couple of things real quick.
Well, I'm from Jamaica. Jamaica is an island surrounded with water.
Thank God.
So if you want to survive, you have to be able to navigate the waters.
True.
So I have been surrounded by water all my life.
Can you swim?
No, not to save my life.
Yeah. As my mom, I can imagine. How can you not swim?
Because I am from the mountainous regions of Jamaica.
Okay.
And the farthest we get to water is to have a shower, a bath,
to cook,
and maybe some dog paddling. But that's about it.
So bring everybody down so if they understand when you say the mountainous region, because the minute you think Jamaica, people think the coast, right? So school them on what's the mountainous region.
All right. Jamaica is one of those Caribbean islands that came about as a result of a volcanic action some millions of years ago. I hope I'm not there when it reverses.
It won't be.
So the island is located in a position where the mountains run through the center of the island. And as you slope from the mountains, you go to the coast. And most of the life of the island is in the mountains. I grew up in the middle of the island in the Dry Harbor Mountains.
Okay.
And so water was not one of the commodities that we had. We depended on the rain, basically. And one of the disadvantages of that is that you lost all your teeth by the time you were a teenager.
Wow.
Because the rainwater had no calcium in it.
Wow.
So you lost all your teeth.
Wow.
That has changed now, though, because with technology, they have added fluoride to the toothpaste.
Right.
People are educated how they can take care of their teeth. So
it was the norm at that age growing up that you'd be losing your teeth at what age?
Yeah. Well, I was wearing dentures by the time I was 16. Full dentures by
By
the time
16.
I was 16.
And that was purely result of just pure rainwater.
The rainwater. But there was also something good about the rainwater. Is that you didn't have to use much soap.
That is so true.
So you
so
saved on soap.
That is so true.
Yeah, because you had to use very little soap, or else you would need all the water on the mountaintop to wash
What?
the soap away.
That is so true. And you know, I
Right.
want to go back to and I'm glad that we started at the where you grew up and the experience you had as a little girl. However, being your son and being from Jamaica, I did take showers in rainwater, and I did use too much soap at once, and I'm still to this day trying to wash that soap off.
Well.
It is so, I don't know what it is. I think it's the fact that the rainwater is
It's
soft.
soft water.
It's soft water. So let's deal into this real quickly. Growing up as a little girl, you grew up in St. Anne,
In St. Anne.
and we got to take a big moment right now, and I'm going to ask you to lift up your Poland Spring. I'm going to lift up my green bottle. Let's do a toast to one of the biggest product from St. Anne, which is Bob Marley.
Bob Marley. Yeah.
Legal product, Bob Marley.
Yeah. Legal pharmaceuticals.
Yes, exactly. It was Bob Marley, and that's the parish you grew up in. What was that like? What was that neighborhood like?
A very quiet. It was a family neighborhood. Each family was responsible for every child in that neighborhood. And so it was not just the responsibility of your biological parents to care for you, but you dare not misbehave on the streets or anywhere, because any parent who saw you misbehaving could correct you with words or
A spanking.
a spanking. And you dare not go home and tell your parents.
So it was that
So
whole.
in those days, the village raised the children.
Wow. Going to school, coming back, everybody to be well behaved.
Exactly. You had to be well behaved.
So
So you're under the microscope all the time.
let's set a visual picture of the timeline. And I'm not trying to get your age out there, but let's set a visual image of the timeline. What year was this?
This was probably in the 60s.
Early 60s Jamaica.
Yeah. In the 60s. In
And,
the 50s, 60s.
and Jamaica was actually budding into more technology, or where were we with what technologies were you exposed to at that time?
We didn't know anything that you had here. We had a radio. I remember the first radio that came into my community.
Yeah.
It was run by what looked like a car battery.
That big.
It wasn't big. It wasn't a big radio. It was probably maybe half the size of that television screen.
Okay.
But it was run by what
It's in the car.
what is in the car now. And you would have to have a wire attached to the radio, hoisted on a stick or metal post going up into the air, which was then the antenna.
Okay. And this was an AM signal, I'm assuming.
Right. And people would gather around that radio just to wonder and to hear, where's all that coming from? And stories have been told of little children wondering, how did the people in the radio eat?
Because, okay.
They never saw them.
So there'd have to be somebody in that radio.
They thought it was somebody in that radio, but that was, way back then. Because
Did you not share a story with me? Was it Grandpa that pour some rice in the back of?
Not him, not my family. Some other family did.
Yeah.
And of course, that was the end of the radio.
No, share the story. Share the story.
This man, he said he was sorry for this person in the radio. So the night after his wife had gone to bed, he went into the kitchen, got some rice that was left over, and pumped it into the back of the radio.
So the guy could eat.
So the guy could eat. Well, next morning, they had no radio.
Wow. And at that time, it was mucho problema if the radio wasn't working.
Yeah.
So
it was a phenomenon. A radio was a phenomenon in the 50s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. So the family makeup, I know you had my uncle, which was Uncle John.
Mm-hmm.
I know you had
My
your
sister,
Gillette. And it was my grandma, grandpa.
Yeah.
And of course, grandma adopted some kids from the neighborhood.
She always has at least 2 or 3 other children, either from the neighborhood or from her sisters who had early pregnancies and couldn't manage.
The style
So
board
she
of the family.
raised them. She
Wow.
actually raised them.
So what would be one of the most significant things you could say you, now looking back at your childhood, especially at that specific time, that you said, that made an impact on me going forward?
It has to be the strength of my mother. It has to be the strength of my mother, because she was able to virtually make blood out of stones.
Literally.
She could do the impossible. There would be nothing in the kitchen to prepare for dinner, but when dinner time came, there was a sumptuous meal on the table.
That is so true.
And she would go to the back of the yard and she would pick the buds from the different vegetables, like the chocho, the coco, the callaloo, spinach.
Yeah, yeah.
She would pick those and she would all cook them into a stew. And that's what we would have for dinner. And
My
so
mom's
maybe
would.
that's why I look the way I am now.
Yeah, exactly. You do look phenomenal, actually. Because every time I see you, I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, we never had a lot of meat and fish, and we just ate vegetables.
Back to being in the
Right?
mountains.
And in the mornings when you woke up, you had breakfast, and breakfast could be whatever you could put your hands on. No bread, no bacon. If there were eggs, we had eggs because we had chickens.
Oh, okay.
And those eggs, when you open them, the yolk was as yellow as the sun.
Wow. Free range.
Right. Free range chicken.
So now you're basically telling me that the lifestyle that we're paying $1 million for here,
It's killing
the
us.
organic this, the organic,
It's killing us.
not only our pocket but physically killing us.
It's killing us. Yeah. My father died at 95. And he was as strong as anybody else. He had an accident, and that is what contributed to his
And
death.
if it wasn't for the accident, he'd probably
He would have made it to 100.
easily.
Yeah.
And I remembered he was a strong, solid. I mean,
Yeah.
I remembered him taking me on farming trips with him, and I really, really enjoyed spending that time with him.
Right.
It was unbelievable. But it's funny to hear you emphasize how much, and I don't think grandma or your mom knew how much of an impact she was making on your life.
They never knew. They just wanted to make sure we were better than became out better than they did. But I'm not sure now, other than the fact that we can read and write and maneuver and manipulate. I'm not sure if we're better than they are. I'm not sure.
Squirrel Rosenberg Radio, Beverly Lawrence just dropped a jewel. And a jewel is when you say something profound. I want you to say that again. You don't know if we're better off now than if we were back then.
I don't think so.
When it was more simpler.
It was simpler. We truly loved each other. In my community, with my mother growing up, I'd say periodically a family would kill a pig.
Yeah.
And everybody in that neighborhood would get some of it. And whenever anybody else butchers, it is shared. Because we didn't have any refrigerator to keep the stuff.
Oh.
But you looked out for your neighbor, and when we prepare meals, we would send parts of the meals to different neighbors around.
Wow.
Whether they had it or not. It was real sharing.
Squirrel Rosenberg Radio, Squirrel Rosenberg Podcast. Let me get that right. I'm getting so excited because my mom is just giving me all the history that I've somewhat heard before, but this is all new information. Stay tuned. We're going to take a quick break, come back, jump into the second segment of this podcast, and keep educating you on what it takes to make such a phenomenal human being. Squirrel Rosenberg Podcast. One. What age were you at this time?
I was like 7, 8.
Do you remember, now that you're 16 and can look back all those years, and I'm making fun of you because you're so young, but you can look back a couple years. Do you remember anything fascinating or interesting about growing up in Jamaica that made you say, yeah, I want to hold this?
Oh yeah.
Share something.
Yeah, so back then I was learning all about the culture. I was just soaking up everything and all the culture that is in Jamaica, and honestly it's a whole nother world. It's beautiful. It's paradise.
Were you born in the US or born there?
I was born in the US. I traveled there when I was 6 years old, and I lived there for 4 years until I was 10.
Ooh.
Yes.
This is my youth. So you get ripe in Jamaica.
Like a mango.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so Jamaican. Squirrel Rosenberg Podcast. We're getting ready to jump back into the second segment here with this profound international guest that we have at the table tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Beverly Lawrence, a.k.a. Bevlar. Thank you for taking us through that journey through St. Anne and that whole, realization of Are we really better off with this massive wealth of information that's at our fingertips and the way the world's going versus a simpler way of living when things were a lot slower and a lot more meaningful? But as we, graduate from that time period, I wanted to ask you your passion for being a teacher, because I know that's what you got into. Where did that stem from?
If I should tell you the story,
Please do.
teaching found me rather than I found teaching. Because
Okay.
all my life I wanted to be a nurse.
Interesting.
All my life, and I actually started the process of being a nurse by doing the application to go in for training, and I missed it by a day.
What do you mean I missed it by a day?
When I got the invitation to come in to sit the entrance examination for nursing, I could not get to Kingston early enough to make it to the university hospital where I would have gone.
Okay.
Because those days we never had telephones.
Of course.
So we had what was called telegrams.
Oh, I remember
Do
the
you know
telegram.
what that is?
Okay, a telegram would be, let me see if I can remember here. Okay, I love this. And for all my viewers and listeners out there, I want you to be brainstorming right now. A telegram, if I'm not mistaken, was something that was prescribed on a piece of paper and sent,
Can I help you?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Please.
It was like running a relay, but using language.
Okay.
So I would go to the post office closest to me,
Okay.
and I write my message. But your message it had no grammatical form. For example, if a message was, I'll be coming to Kingston tomorrow, meet me at the bus stop.
Okay.
The message would, coming Kingston tomorrow, meet bus stop. Because you paid for each word.
Oh.
Okay, so they used a code. They use a code, like if they wanted to write coming, they would write cat, orange, mango, ink.
Okay.
And that post office sends that code to a second post office, and that post office sends it to another post office
Okay.
until it gets to the one closest to you.
What?
When it gets to the one closest to you, it is written out on a piece of paper.
Decoded.
It is decoded, written on a piece of paper, given to a postman who jumps on his bicycle and rides and takes it to you.
You serious?
Right.
My God.
Right.
Okay.
It's kind of like the Pony Express from way back when, but just that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right?
No, so as I hear you chop down that process, I am imagining I am pressing send,
Exactly.
and that is done in a millisecond.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
That took probably a day and a night to happen. And so when my telegram came the evening, there's only one bus that can take me to Kingston the next morning to get to the interview. And there's no way I could be ready overnight to get that bus to go to Kingston.
Wow.
So I communicated with the nursing school and told them what had happened. And they say they would call me for the second batch, which would be the following October, this being April.
Okay. So you miss April. You got to wait that whole entire time.
Right. So while I'm waiting, my headmaster, my principal,
Yeah.
thought that I should be a teacher. So he went out and made an application for me to go into a teacher's college.
Did you know he was doing this?
No, I never knew. Because in those days, you depended on your teacher. And whatever your teacher told you was good for you, that was what you would do. So I actually gave up on nursing, went into teaching. And if I were to be born again, I would teach again.
How long have you been teaching?
Longer than you've been born.
Of course. I remembered when she was my principal and my math teacher. I have I have the scars to show for me answering the question wrong. So I know this lady's been in teaching for a long time, but I want my listeners and my viewers out there to understand how committed and how passionate you've been. How long have you been teaching?
I thought for 44 years. I'm not that old though.
Exactly. You know, so funny. And as you said that, let me ask you this. Do you have any idea what your teacher saw in you that made him say, she should be? Think back of it. Were you that student in class that was always, participating and making, what did he see?
I don't know. You have to ask him that question. But then you're going to have to resurrect him.
Of course.
I have no clue.
But he saw
but
something.
Then my mother told me that she believed him. Because as a child, we had grass growing in the backyard.
Yeah.
These, like the plant you have at home. That's
yeah. The tall, wissy. Yeah.
And so I would be in the backyard plaiting them into groups.
Yeah.
And teaching them. Teaching the grass. And she thought, oh, well, I don't see a nurse there. I see a teacher.
Or somebody crazy. Because right now you'd be on also all form of drugs right now if you were doing that.
I think, though, if I had gone into nursing, I would probably I would end up teaching in nursing. Because there's also the scope for teaching.
True.
In the nursing school.
True.
And
wow.
So,
I'm very honored that you've really shared that, because I don't remember even hearing that whole dynamics.
No, you never did.
Yeah. So here on Score Rosenberg Radio, you're getting some truth, you're getting some knowledge. But I also am very curious on, now that you're into the teaching thing, how and when did you meet my dad?
How and when did I meet your dad? Your dad met me.
Oh, nice. He stood no chance, right? Where were you? I mean,
I had just graduated from Teachers College and was at my first job as a teacher. And he was agricultural instructor.
Okay.
What is that? This is somebody who the government trains and sends them into the communities to work with small farmers to practice good farming techniques.
So my dad, and I know this for a fact, was a horticulturist, agriculturist. I mean, anything to do, talking about
with
a green
the soil,
yeah.
he was into it.
I think everybody says, do you have a green thumb? He had green fingers.
Yeah, he's very good at that. He was very good at that. And so, of course, I suppose I was this attractive young teacher.
Of course.
And he was drawn to me. And
do you remember the first time he walked up to you, or the first time? And what was do you remember the first time he walked up to you?
I can't remember the first time he walked up to me, but I remember the first time I recognized him, because he had been eyeing me for quite a while.
Okay.
And one thing used to happen in the communities where I and the community where I worked is that the teachers who were there ahead of you would put on a party.
Okay.
When the young teachers arrive.
Okay.
So that they can be exposed to the community. And those were the days when the gentleman would come up to you, good afternoon, good evening, good night, and may I have this dance?
Oh, wow.
They asked.
Not grab you by the hand.
Oh, no.
Or the hair
No.
and drag you to the dance floor.
No. May I have this dance?
And you do have the ability to say no.
And you do have the ability to say no. And they don't bother you if you say no. And so he did that, and it was a Percy Sledge.
Oh, okay. Do you remember the Percy Sledge record? Because Percy Sledge, and this was in mid-60s.
Yeah, mid-60s.
Percy Sledge.
Yeah,
and there's a record that because I know that artist actually. But do you remember the record?
Not off the top of my head right now. But then it was one of those that we occupied a tile. You know what that is?
Yes. Score Rosenberg Radio. My mom is dropping major jewels and knowledge right now. So we're gonna define when she says owning a tile, right?
Well,
in Jamaica we call it rent a tile.
Rent a tile.
So basically, it's a 12 by 12 space that's a tile that a tile takes up, and you're being asked to dance, and you have to stay within.
I think that's it. I think That's it. When a man loves a woman.
Percy Sledge. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, my boy E-Dub is getting that playing on the back of the SoundCloud right now. Percy Sledge.
Yeah.
When a man loves a woman. The record you danced with my dad on that 12x12 tile.
Yeah. And of course, I was this nice Christian young girl. Never had a boyfriend before.
What?
Don't know what it is to be so close to a person of the opposite sex.
Like, yeah.
But all I know, he had swept me off my feet.
Wow.
And the rest is history.
Here comes.
There you go.
Here comes Squirrel Rosenberg. We're gonna take a quick break, come back because we want to jump into the last half of this interview. Wow, yo, take us out with this Percy Sledge record that is the catalyst for your boy being here. Squirrel Rosenberg Radio, Squirrel Rosenberg Podcast, Squirrel Rosenberg TV, Bevlar 1. When did you realize that artistically you have something special?
Artistically, I knew that I was always doing stuff inside the house. Like, I was always drumming. I was always tapping on things. I was always singing. I was like always performing. I always was big on performance in general.
Was anybody else, his siblings, performing or?
Yeah, no. Well, it's just it runs in my blood. Like low key, I have like a history of, you know, being in plays. When I was younger, I was taking guitar lessons and I was singing. And
so your mom, Subhadra, pushed. I mean, not pushed, but supported.
She pushed me. My beginning, my development. She's pushing me now. My mom's gonna always push me, bro. She be pushing, like she pushes.
Well, you got a Jamaican mom, so
yeah,
yo, like a hand truck down the road, man. Yo, we're making this work.
Facts.
Squirrel Rosenberg Podcast, kicking back here with Bevlar, getting to this interesting. We call it the stew, the sauce of this podcast. And a lot of people are asking, you know, when they talk to me, they go, so why did you interview that person? Or why are you having a conversation with that person? Number one is everybody in my eyes is a superstar and their story transcends and expounds each other's lives. As unique as it is to you, there's some commonality. And I want everybody to hear the strengths, the stories, the fails, the wins, the losses, so you can really be empowered. And I'm telling you right now, not only because I'm your son, but I have seen the cloth that you've been cut from. And I am impressed.
Thank you, sir.
I'm very, very impressed. And I'm glad to be, you know, I'm going to use another a metaphor here, which is I am glad to be one of the fabric or one of those lines in that cloth because I can't go wrong. So let's just go back to, you know, you met my dad, you guys are moving on, and you get together. And your first run at having a child or having kids gives you two. What was that like? So those don't even understand. What we mean is twins is what the stork delivered.
I'm not certain about the stork. I deliver them.
Yes. Thanks for that correction. Yeah, what was that like? Did you know you had twins?
Yeah, I knew from because I was 110 pounds at the time. 110 pounds. And by the time you guys were born, I was 157 pounds. So
wow.
Over that period, you do the math and see how much weight I put on. But we didn't have the technology to know that I was going to have a boy and a girl.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
I just knew we were going to have twins and you arrived first.
So wait. Before the arrival, how did my dad handle the news?
He was cool. He was okay.
Felt like big man.
Oh yeah.
Like you went to the dance once and you come up with two babies. So
exactly. He was excited. He didn't have a problem. He was really excited. You know what was bothering him most of all was that I was well because I was very sick.
Very sick.
At the beginning of the pregnancy, but it was worth it all.
And of course, Squirrel Rosenberg came first. Bow. And then half an hour later.
An hour later, your sister came.
Because you were telling me she was actually playing around in there for a little bit.
Right. When you arrived, she was supposed to be a breech presentation.
Right.
What does that mean? It means she was going to come foot first.
Okay.
And so that is not as easy as you might think it is, even though the foot is smaller than the head.
Yeah.
And so during the hour when she was in there, she turned herself around And then an hour later, she was out. So I had a boy and a girl, Paul and Paula.
Bong, here we are.
Where's she?
Well, I mean, here we are in your arms when we were born.
Right.
And we're also going to touch on that a little bit. However, that moment of having both of us there, what an accomplishment.
Yeah. And the thing too, nature prepares you, whether you like it or not. Nature prepares you for every situation it puts you in.
Score Rosenberg Radio, another jewel being dropped here, fresh from Jamaica. Could you say that again, please?
Nature prepares you for every situation it puts you in.
What do you mean by that?
Here I am, a young mother. Never had to, because my mother raised us, we never had to raise each other. So I was not very versed with having children.
Okay.
But I found very innovative ways to raise you guys, to cope with it. I only took 4 months off from work, and then after that I got a full-time helper. And as soon as you were able to be dragged to school with me, by age 3, you were going to school.
Wow. I remember those days.
Yeah.
My short pants, my khaki pants.
Right.
My
And
sister.
those were the days when I got like 2 hours sleep each night. Because I was a teacher, I had to take books home to mark.
Yeah.
I had to prepare
Prep
your
work.
food, prepare work for the next day, get you ready for school the next morning, and I'm there with my class.
You know, I can honestly tell you right now, now that I'm a parent, and I look back at some of those days that you trump through. Those were, I don't know how you pull those things off.
Okay, you find the resource to do it when you have to do it.
Because we would come home, and I do remember you would have to make dinner, get us to finish homework, still prep your stuff, get us showered, into bed, you to bed, to be up before us.
Have the breakfast on the table before you wake up and be out.
I salute you.
Thank you.
No, I salute you. And now knowing that grandma, your mom, was a full hands-on mom, was there. So you didn't have to take care of yourself or take care of your brothers and sisters.
Right, she took care of
Wow. So now we're here, and my brother John comes 4 years later. Was he on the to-do list, or was it like,
No, he
here
was
comes
not.
John?
He was not on the to-do list. He was Mr. Sneaky. But I'm glad he sneaked,
Yeah, right?
because he's playing a good role right now.
Yeah, beautiful.
He
Yeah,
was supposed to
it's
have
a really good blessing
Right.
to that whole energy. And I'm asking these questions from a bird's eye view because I'm trying to be as objective as possible. And I wanted to just hear, now that you got us, we moved into the town that we live in now, which is, we're in the west end of the island, a little town called Lucy, which is right between Montego Bay and the Grill.
Tourism hub.
The tourism hub, actually, and that's where we set up shop. And I am always fascinated by how involved our family was in that town. What was the catalyst behind that?
You always wanted to do something. You always wanted to be a part of something. And unfortunately, we don't know the word no.
Yeah.
So you're always involved, and you're always being asked to do stuff, to speak at functions, to cook for fundraisers.
As a kid growing up, I
Yeah.
gotta tell you, I can never forget every event or you were speaking so who was the catalyst for that? Was it you or Dad?
Me, of course. I was the one who spoke.
But who was more because I don't understand how we were so busy in everything.
You were just available, and once you did something once and it was well done, people kept coming
True.
after you.
You know what? You answered my
People
question
kept
well.
coming after you.
Score Rosenberg Radio. Beverly Lawrence just dropped another jewel on the show here. Say that again. Once you do something well,
People keep coming after you for it.
and that's what's true,
Yeah.
because I gotta admit, you always delivered. Dad always delivered, and everybody's like, Mr. Lawrence, is that you guys were the to-go person to
Right.
get things done.
Right.
And people would sometimes sit back knowing that you guys would come in and save the day.
Exactly.
Wow. So let's just touch on where we are right now. And a lot of changes that have happened over the past 10, 12 years. and I'm including the loss of my sister, your daughter, Paula. And, as a matter of fact, it's so significant that we were mentioning this because Prodigy from Mobb Deep passed away from the same complication to sickle cell. And I can tell you this, Mom, every time I come to my birthday or I hear of a sickle cell case, I think of how fortunate I have been. Because here I am, a twin, in the belly, same time, formed the same time. And not only do I not have the trait, but my sister has full-blown sickle cell.
Full-blown sickle cells.
And as a result, passed away on 2005, actually.
Yeah, 2005.
On your birthday.
On my birthday.
So, we're going to touch on this a little bit because I want you to hear my perspective on having to call you to say, hey, Beverly, this is what we're dealing with. But when I called you, once again, with how profound you are.
I knew something had happened.
What do you mean by you knew?
I had come home from school that evening earlier than usual. It was as though something was prompting me to leave. Because normally when school ends, I sit there for another 2 hours doing stuff.
Of course.
So I'm in my room and my phone rings. I answer the phone and Daniel, Paula's friend, is on the phone. And she says, I have to call you because Paula is not well. And I said, what's new?
Because she's sickle cell. She's always in the hospital.
Not well. And she said, this time it is different. And when she says that, I heard Paula.
In Jamaica?
Yeah. Paula was not on the phone.
Yeah.
It's as though she was on the outside of the house.
Yeah.
And passing by the house and saying, love you, mommy.
Wow.
And I said to Daniel, don't joke with me. Because
I just heard Paula.
I just heard Paula in the background. And she said, no, you can't hear Paula in the background because I'm at home and Paula is in the hospital. And when she told me what had happened, I just knew that something was not right. And so when I got to Canada and she was on all these machines, I knew she wasn't there.
Because you had already heard.
She had already died. So I knew
Wow. I really appreciate you for being so open and sharing that experience.
I can do it now. I was not able to do it a few years ago without getting
because as you're talking to me right now, I'm trying to hold back the tears because it was a very intense time for our family. And I have definitely felt the gift of God comforting us through that experience.
He has.
And as we get ready to wrap this powwow, I wanted to compliment you because when my father passed away, you did some things that were so phenomenal. And I've told you over and over before, but I'm going to say it again. You have raised the bar phenomenally.
Thank you.
And, when we experienced Paula's loss, the way you rallied around James and everything else, it was just, I don't know, organically, you are a rare human being.
Again, whatever situation God puts you in, he prepares you for it.
Yeah, he did.
So it's not by my strength, because I am a firm believer in God. And I know that he is the one who has allowed what has happened to happen. And I remember when your dad was very ill, and I could see the end coming, and I didn't know where I was going or what was going to happen.
Unknown ground.
And I basically challenged God. I basically went into my bathroom one day and I said, God, if you think you are bad, give me more than I can cope with. I've never gotten to that stage.
He's not going to let you get to that stage.
No, I won't get to that stage.
Score Rosenberg Radio, Score Rosenberg TV, Score Rosenberg Podcast. We're getting to the intimate part of this powwow with my mom, Beverly Lawrence, the infamous, I'm going to call her Wonder Woman, Superwoman. As we get ready to wrap up this last segment, we're going to take a quick break, come back and wrap and let you understand what she's doing now and where she's taking her life and the impact she's making, not only on the small town that is Lucy, but on the country and on the world at large. Score Rosenberg Radio, Score Rosenberg Podcast. One. Could you remember remember someone, something that propelled you down this path? Do you think of one moment, or were you just always open to your mom, Subhadra? And I'm going to say her name every time I mention mom because it's so powerful. But
true.
did you accept everything that your mom, Subhadra, opened up to you? Did you ever rebel? I just want to get to that one catalyst that pushed that boulder down the road, if you can remember. Was it an uncle that was playing an instrument? What was it?
I just fell in love with music. Like as a kid, like I saw people playing guitars, and my mom was just always supportive. She just knew it. Like one day we woke up in Jamaica and we're like, I want to go to LA and I want to be an actor. And my mom was always there to influence and like, you know, push us. And I was just really just into music and performing. I was always singing, like all them Disney movies. Oh my God, I knew every single like Tinkerbell song.
Are you serious?
Yeah, bro. You like Little Mermaid, all of that. Under the
SQR
Sea.
podcast, Square Rosen.
Yo.
Give me the Under the Sea joint.
Under the sea, dun, 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 under the sea, hey, everybody's wetter, down where it's wetter, take it from me, dun, dun, dun. Yo, I love Disney.
Yeah.
I've been auditioning for them for a while now.
Oh, it sets the mood because it brought me back to when I heard that.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
Little Mermaid, I love that show.
SQR podcast, Squirrel Rosenberg Radio. We're cracking into Ganesh Matlock. Squirrel Rosenberg podcast as we're getting ready to wrap. And I admit, this has got to be one of my most intense podcasts. You know, normally I'm known for bringing other people to tear, but I had to really, you know, be honest on this because I am blessed to have you here sitting with me. So as we get ready to jump into this last segment, and the reason why I wanted to hear this is I am impressed with how you've been involved because you're now retired from teaching. You're literally retired from being a full-time mom because you have done an excellent job with all the kids we're doing, and you're there. How are you keeping yourself so involved and looking so incredible? What are the things you're doing on a daily basis?
I am very active. First of all, in the mornings, I walk at least 7 miles.
You're defeating the purpose of the automobile. Are you serious?
I am serious.
7 miles
Each morning. And sometime on 2 or 3 of those mornings, the beach is a part of the walk.
Okay.
And I'm very picky with what I eat.
Okay.
I have no tolerance for salt or sugar.
Nice.
Not because I'm told not to, but
You just weaned yourself off of it.
yes, I have no tolerance for salt or sugar. I'm very mild-mannered. I don't get easily upset. I walk away. I sleep well. I love my neighbor as myself.
Profound. Another jewel on Score Rosenberg Radio.
Yeah, because if I love my neighbor more than myself, it's wrong.
Yeah.
That's totally wrong.
True.
Right? And I just live a day at a time. I don't worry about tomorrow.
And I hate to say this, but a double jewel on Score Rosenberg Radio. Say that again.
I don't worry about tomorrow.
And we get so pre-absorbed into tomorrow, which we have no control over. Right. So those ingredients, 6 or 7 things you just listed, are the things that have really added to your peace of mind.
It has to. It has to. I don't know for sure, but this is me. And that's what I do. So I would say yes.
If you have, this is a question I always pose to all my guests when they're ending. You have the magic wand. You have 2 things you can do in this world before it's over. What would you do?
I would want us to recognize how insignificant we are in this world. And as powerful as we want to make ourselves, we can't go beyond the limit that God gives us. No money can preserve the life that we seek to live unless God allows it to happen. And that is what I would, whatever form you see God as.
Yeah.
We are not in control.
So
and
the awareness
more we
of
try
that.
to be in control is the worse we become. So I'd like for us to recognize that.
To be aware of that.
Just to be aware. And secondly, I'd like for us to count the blessings we have now. We take too many things for granted.
Well spoken.
You know, when we look at what is happening in Syria, where children who are 5 years old have not yet gone into school because of the war that is there, and they don't know when they'll get to school. We're going to have an illiterate generation. And yet we have children here who can go to school and are hiding from school.
Yeah. How ironic is that?
You know, we don't know what we have. So if I could get people to just value what we now have and accept ourselves for who we are and submit to a higher power. Case in point, my sister,
Yeah.
as you know, they just went into her brain on the 15th of May
Speak on that.
and took out a 2-pound mass out of her brain in an 18-hour surgery. And she is recovering marvelously right now.
And you contribute that too.
It has to be. Because God gives man the power to do things, but he gives the body the power to heal.
True.
So with all the work the doctors could have done, if God never gave us the capacity to heal, the doctor's work would not have
futile.
Would have been futile.
So much gems, so much jewel, so much knowledge. I am profound. I'm at a loss for words. Thank you so much for being here, Mummy.
You're welcome.
As we say in Jamaica, thank you so much for being here. Give me a kiss.
Thank you, sir.
Score Rosenberg Podcast, Score Rosenberg TV. We've been blessed. We've been honored. This podcast is going to go down in the history books of one of the most interesting, I can tell you right now. I love everything you've dropped on us. And I am going to be honored to have you back on the show when we get the show moving in the direction that it is going to be moving into. And we have the audience that we need. We're going to have you here again to jump in and really so we can follow up. So to everybody tuning in, thank you so much. Bevlar, Jamaica, a lot of knowledge. Thank you so much for coming in and dropping us.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
it's
much.
an honor. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to only get better from here. Squirrel Rosenberg Podcast. Stay tuned. One.